Uncensored, no holds barred talk. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. This is Global Reality Radio Network.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another live edition of the Global Reality right here on the Global Reality Radio Network. I'm your host, Josh Reeves. Thanks for being with us here tonight. And yes, indeed, we're here for another late night Moonbat edition of the broadcast. So glad you could be with us, and glad you chose to be with us here tonight for another late night show. We've got a lot of important information to get into with you here tonight on the broadcast. I guess it's always important, but tonight I feel like I have important things that people need to hear. It surprisingly, I know you tend to think that somebody like myself who does a radio show that, I must think that every day I get up here, I feel like I have important stuff. I wouldn't be doing it if I didn't think that, it was stuff you need to be informed about. But tonight, there is some things that I'm going to get into here with you here tonight I think are important. We're going to be getting into some stuff that relates to what we've been talking about as far as they're just ramping up this alien invasion stuff left and right everywhere. And believe it or not, many of you may or may not be aware of this, but believe it or not, that does tie distinctly in with our work into the Council for National Policy, the priest class, the whole end spectrum of that, and their final end game of the whole shebang. So we'll be getting into some of that information tonight, detailing that, as well as some news information, and love to have your emails as well if you've got listener emails out there. globalrealityshow@gmail.com. That's globalrealityshow@gmail.com. If any of you out there have things you want to hear me talk about, topics of discussion, any of that stuff, globalrealityshow@gmail.com. That's globalrealityshow@gmail.com. That's where you send those over at. So definitely do that tonight, and I'll be glad to get into whatever I can get into for you here with the show tonight on the broadcast. My website where this broadcast originates from, www.theglobalreality.com. That's www.theglobalreality.com. We go commercial-free, uncensored. This is not a PG-rated broadcast or a G-rated broadcast or an FCC-approved broadcast or a for the faint of heart broadcast, or not for the kiddies, not for the kiddos. I get messages, not all the time, but occasionally I get messages from people, because a lot of people are finding us now through YouTube and through, my appearance on Red Ice Radio. And so a lot of people are not, it kind of sucks for me because I'm having to go back and re-explain myself all over again, which, I get into that comfortable zone of not having to explain myself to our regular listening audience. I am what I am. I do what I do. And I was on other networks for a lot of years where I couldn't say what I wanted to say and I couldn't be myself. And so I run the show now. No one controls my show but me. I get to talk about what I want to talk about. I get to say what the fuck I want to say. And that's all there is to it. So, if you don't like it, I'm sorry. You know, it's hell, it's not even an R-rated broadcast. This motherfucker's triple X most of the time. But anyway, that's just the way it is. So, thanks everybody out there for being with us. TheGlobalReality.com is my website. We go commercial free. We go uncensored. We don't have sponsors. We don't have any of that. We ask our listening audience to support us to keep us going with the Chip and Bear, the donate button. I got an email today from Scott asking about the whole camera situation with the Secret Right Volume 2. That is indeed what's holding us back, and he wanted me to kind of put it out there for the audience and kind of set a goal for that. And I have been looking at some, trying to find one, because I bought the one that I had. It was just a little Canon, personal camera, by no means professional or, what I should be using at the film level making I'm trying to play at. But those cost upwards of, you want a badass camera that's going to look like, the shit Jonesy's got in his films. It's going to be $5,000 minimum. But he wanted me to put it out there and let everybody know kind of what the goal was. And, the stuff I've been looking at, it's been, $500 to $1,000. It's like $1,000 or $1,200 for a good one, for something that's, going to last a while and be totally pro. I think it was like $1,200 or something like that. But anyway, that's what it is. If you want to help us to try and get a new camera so we can finish what we need to do on the Secret Right Volume 2, you can do that at the donate button there at the website. Just use the chipping banner for the bills every month so we make sure we get what we need there. But anyway, I just want to put that out there. And he thought it might be a good idea, so I did that. So there you go. We're going to be reading from the Lost Book of Enki as well tonight. Picking up where we left off last night. I think it was something like page 223 or something like that. I'm scrolling back up here through I don't know what makes this. Anybody have a scientific opinion on what makes a PDF scroll through pages on its own accord? I've never been able to figure that out. It's one of the mysteries of the universe. Yeah, the account of the deluge that swept over Earth. We'll be picking up there tonight on the broadcast as well. The news story that made me sort of spawn me on a conversation I want to have with you all tonight. It's crazy. I'm starting to see a lot of indicators of things. There's some stuff when I first started finding out about the Council for National Policy, the CNP, back in 2007, and talking about it on shows in 2008 and so on and so on. One of the first things that I found was this idea of this, sort of a technological theocracy. And I saw this video today. Frank Schaeffer, Bachman wants to replace American democracy with a Christian theocracy. Now, first off, Frank Schaeffer is a snake in the grass, and he's not to be trusted any which way but Sunday. This guy, the balls of this guy, his father, Frank Schaeffer's father, was one of the founding members, one of the original members of the Council for National Policy. His family goes all the way back with the, with the whole CMP Christian right-wing family for years and years and years. But this guy turned coat and now is supposedly a left-winger. It says, former evangelical Christian Frank Schaeffer told Democracy Now! On Wednesday that Republican presidential candidate Michelle Bachmann wanted to turn the United States into a Christian version of modern-day Iran. Now, he would know better than anybody because he comes from that exact background. And that's exactly what they want to do. And he knows it because, he probably heard his father talking about that and was probably there. But see, now he's jumped over to this, it's like WWF. Now he's jumped over to some other side, and he's using his knowledge as political leverage before the elections. This guy's not to be trusted any more than Michelle Bachmann and these other guys, but he's absolutely right. And it has to do with dominionism. We'll get into that. We'll get into dominionism, and I'm going to tell you how this ties in with the whole alien invasion scenario stuff too as well tonight. So she comes from a fringe, even of the fringe, which is the Reconstructionist Dominionist movement that honestly, in the best of all worlds, as far as they're concerned, would replace American democracy with a theocracy. Now, that's one of the first things I found. All these guys are into that. That's, people have always asked me, what are the reasons why we should be worried about the Council for National Policy? Why should we be worried about people who are, associating with people that are in this group and all this stuff? That's one of the biggest ones right there. But I'll get to that in just a minute. But the whole thing about this is that they want to replace the current form of government with a form of government that is a theocracy that has to do with dominionism. Dominionism, if you don't know what that is, it's this idea that essentially it's like a bastardization of Genesis 1:28. They think that Christians and the church and the papacy and everything, the whole Christian end of things, have to be on top of and control everything. All social institutions, government institutions, everything. And they think that until that happens, that Jesus won't be able to return to earth until basically they control it all. And, Perry's a dominionist, Bachman's a dominionist, almost everybody in the whole Council for National Policy that's their big secret. That's why people get so nervous when you start bringing this up. So Frank Schaeffer here is absolutely right, but again, he's a snake in the grass too because he comes from that same background. And just like the crazy right-wingers and Bush and the warmongers and everything else were used as the scapegoat to be able to get in Obama and the lefties, now they're going to turn that around and use that to bring in the dominionists. And it may happen, folks, before it's all over with. Now, how does this tie into extraterrestrials and all the rest of this phony alien invasion thing? Well, one thing that you have to understand is that these people will do anything they can to get people to believe that the end of the world's coming, the fulfilling of the Bible prophecies, all this stuff. And that's what they want to do. I mean, if you think about it, who would be most likely to be behind either a stage alien invasion or a Project Bluebeam scenario? Now, let's be clear about something first off. People often confuse Project Bluebeam stuff and the fake alien invasion stuff and see them as one and the same, and they are indeed not one and the same. Now, if Project Bluebeam is true or isn't, we really don't know for sure. But whether it is or it isn't, one of the things it talked about was that the only reference it made to UFOs, it didn't say that they were going to stage an alien invasion. That's not what it talked about. People often get that confused, and they think it's the same thing when it's not. Just like, and I think that's by design. Just like people say that Wernher von Braun said they were going to stage an alien invasion. That's not what he said either. He said that they were going to tell us hostile alien invasions. Hostile aliens wanted to invade us, and hostile aliens were threatened. We had to weaponize space against them. But that it would all be a lie. And that would be the final card, and it would be a lie because these aliens indeed wouldn't be hostile, but we would be told they are, so we would unite against them and bring about a new world order and all the rest of this. But they want to bring about this, merging of all world religions, the merging of the revelation of creating a new religion, a one world religion, merging that with the political, social, and religious, everything, just an amalgamation into one. That's what the whole world order thing is about. And they're going to use technology to do it. They're going to use technology to bring this in. Now, the difference between us, and that's where this whole thing about the staged alien invasion scenario thing to me is very interesting. Because people have said, oh, they're going to use, satellites and holograms and all this stuff to make a fake an alien invasion. Well, every time somebody says that, and that's become almost like an accepted meme in the truth movement, but there's not really any documentation to back that up. Now, I don't doubt they might stage something, but we're sort of confusing this idea of phony alien invasion with Project Bluebeam when these things are mutually exclusive. So let's talk about the idea, because again, the staged alien invasion thing, where is this coming from? And when everybody talks about staged alien invasion thing, what do they bring out as their evidence? They bring out the von Braun stuff, Wernher von Braun stuff, and they bring up Bluebeam. But those things are not necessarily talking about staging an alien invasion. What Project Bluebeam talks about is this holographic projection that will make everyone in the world believe that religious deities are here. They're going to display, Jesus over America and, Buddha over the Middle East, and particular regional religions will have that deity appear over them, and it'll communicate through voice-to-skull technology and tell everyone that religious texts have been misinterpreted, blah, 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 and that this is the true religion, and they're all going to merge together into the sky and create one deity, and then that's what they're going to base all of this around. Now, the staged alien invasion thing, again, what evidence do we have that they're going to fake this and bring up UFOs and everything? I go back to what von Braun said and think that it's more accurate that there would be essentially extraterrestrials that are making themselves known to us, that want to help us fix the problems here on Earth, that want to show us things, they're going to make themselves known to us, and when they make themselves known to us, the elite are going to hijack that, probably show us some, Steven Spielberg created alien footage on TV where the aliens come on TV and say, we want to kill you all and enslave you and get you to mine resources for us, and blah, 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 and all the rest of this. So what we have here is we'll have, real aliens, but a phony message created by the powers that be, telling us these aliens that are revealing themselves to us are hostile when they are indeed or not. So we will band together as a world together for an outside threat, like Kissinger talked about. How quickly would the world come together? Reagan talked about that. An outside threat from aliens. How quickly we'd come together. Real or promulgated, as Kissinger said. And this very well could be the case. We're starting to see more and more of this. It's always this idea that these aliens are always hostile to and everything. All the movies, all the TV shows, the aliens are always hostile. Now, there is a massive agenda going on, if you've been paying attention, to get us to believe in all circumstances these aliens are going to be hostile. That way, when they come on the TV, when aliens really do start to appear, and they come on TV and stage all this TV fakery stuff and tell us these aliens are hostile, well then, because there's this show that we talked about last night that a listener had sent me, that's what they talk about in this, how nukes won't work, and they have their fucking plant Michio Kaku on there. Oh, nukes won't work because in space, blah, 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 blah. There's no shock wave. So what are we going to use? I mean, they're really ramping this up and really talking about this. Now, who's going to benefit the most from this? The power structure, the weapons manufacturers. We've had the Pope talking about aliens. It's okay to believe in aliens. They're of God. Vatican has had, alien conferences that they had a couple of years ago. Now, again, so how does this tie into the CMP? Well, if in order to be able to get their control, they have to have some sort of event that will convince people that, the Christian theocrats, the Christian Reconstructionists, the Dominionists have to be in charge. Now, they're going to need something big for that to happen. Well, what could that big thing be? Well, I don't know. Obama, the birth certificate, maybe the whole thing about, him being from Akhenaten. I mean, hell, maybe they are going to tell us he's the Antichrist. I don't know. But I'll tell you this. Tim LaHaye, the author of the Left Behind books, and if you've ever seen a picture of Tim LaHaye, the guy looks like an absolute demon. I didn't believe in demons until I saw Tim LaHaye, and that's an honest-to-God truth. That guy is a fucking demon. I don't know. Anybody in the chat room got a picture of Tim LaHaye? Drop in that chat room. I want everybody in the chat room right now to take a good look at Tim LaHaye. That guy is a fucking demon, plain and simple. He's got the fucking pointy ears. I mean, the guy just oozes pure evil. One of the things that's commonly overlooked, and I started talking about this, and I haven't talked about it in a while. I started talking about this when I first found out about the CMP. This is one of the first pieces of info I found out about, and I was freaking out about it. In Tim LaHaye's book, Left Behind, his famous book, and I guess that was written in, the late 70s? And don't forget, Tim LaHaye, before founding the CMP, this guy was one of the first truthers, to be honest with you. No shit. I mean, this was in Rolling Stone magazine. This guy was, a big John Birch Society guy in the late 50s. Late 50s, folks. In the late 50s, he's talking about the UN takeover. He's talking about the Illuminati. I'm not kidding you. It just happens to be where he started his ministry, is where the Reagan campaign would later come out, and that's, a lot of the people, that's when the CMP was founded. But in his book, Left Behind, there's actually a character in this book, and it's kind of like, somebody like me or Alex Jones or anybody, kind of a conspiratorial type character. And he goes on air, and after the Antichrist appears, and tells everybody that the Antichrist is not real, that it's holograms that are being beamed down from space, part of a secret military black op program. And then later on, not to spoil it for you, but who cares? You won't read it anyway. It's a shitty book. But later on, anyway, the Antichrist ends up killing the conspiracy theorist guy. Take that.
Take that, you sorry conspiracy theorist. You don't think I'm real? I'm the Antichrist. I'll kill you.
But when I found that out, I went, the terminology that he uses and the way he describes this is long before anybody knew anything about Project Bluebeam. We were talking late 70s or something, I think, when that book was written. But Tim LaHaye in that book describes this technology as if he knows it intimately, knows it personally, knows it well. So that really got me going, thinking, my God, we know these guys control Blackwater. We know that their actions through genocide and the rest of this stuff is they're trying to, create the mechanisms that will bring about the prophecy, fulfill the prophecy. And here we have Tim LaHaye, the founder of the Council for National Policy, describing in his book Project Bluebeam to a T. So I think that we very well may see, in order for these people to take over control, the powers to be, look into the people that are in this Council for National Policy, that are into this dominionist stuff. We're talking about the big players, folks, at all levels. The biggest players in the military-industrial complex, the biggest players, the people that can get the funding, the people that have the technology to do this. They are going to use this to bring about the global order and to also attempt to trick mankind into believing that, this is what we have to do to save ourselves. And I think it's coming to a head, and it sort of spawned me when I saw this, clip of Schaefer saying Bachman's a dominionist. Well, Perry is too, and guess who else is? A lot of people forget this. Back in the elections back in 2008, after Ron Paul dropped out and that whole stage thing, all of a sudden he goes on. You got Alex Jones on his show, and everybody's saying get behind Chuck Baldwin. Paul, so you people put your money behind Ron Paul and put your money in Chuck Baldwin now. Chuck Baldwin's one of the biggest fucking dominionists there is. But that's the big dark secret, folks, and that's why they've put out this phony conspiratorial movement, and why the CMP and the Jesuits and the priest class have spearheaded this, is to create a phony movement that creates this so everybody gets confused on what's going on. And then when they see fake aliens or fake deities over the city, the last people that they're going to be looking at as being responsible for this, or people are going to, well, who's responsible for this? Well, the New World Order. Well, who is that? Because when you leave out the priest class and you leave out the dominions, you leave out the whole end of the spectrum that Jones and his ilk leave out, then you don't give people an opportunity to be able to know the real truth. And that's why that guy is going to be exposed. And he has been exposed, but I mean in a much larger way. I mean, I plan on putting all this stuff in the Secret Volume 2. That's why we got to be able to get a new camera and get that out. Because I mean, I'm trying to keep as much as I can off the air what's going to be in the film. But that's one of the big ones. I mean, you can't ignore the fact that again, I mean, who got Jonesy his start in all this stuff? Right, the John Birch Society, his uncle. I had a side girl, one of our listeners, sent me this thing, and I don't have time to read it all, but it's good, and so I'll put a link to it in the chat room for you guys. And it is Nazi ideology. I mean, you don't think that these CMP right-wingers, Knights of Malta, they are the Nazis. I mean, if you actually do the research and look into this stuff, you'll find that those guys are the Nazis. But she sent me this thing, and it's got some like quotes in here from like Stan Monteith and some other people who's CMP, but and they seem to be in some cases exposing the whole Vatican in. But this gets into the making the conspiracy appear Jewish, and it has some different terms and some different things. But I'll read some of this because it's really good. And I guess this was taken from Stan Monteith, who's also, very much involved in the CMP. And I mean, hell, Radio Liberty was a sovereign military of Malta Nazi radio front. You didn't think we'd ever notice that, Monteith? That, you claim to be exposing the Knights of Malta and the rest of stuff, but your radio show called Radio Liberty was also the name. Radio Liberty was the name of a sovereign military of Malta propaganda front for the Nazis. I mean, that's a historical fact. You can look it up. But he says, Carol Quigley in Tragedy and Hope tells us how banking influences what is going on because these organizations, i.e. covert organizations and secret organizations, tie into banking. And secret organizations tie into Lazard brothers, i.e. Lazard Freres. And of course, most people think that the Lazard brothers is a Jewish organization. It is not Jewish at all. They push forward the Jewish bankers to conceal what these people are really doing. And of course, we would go back in history and we would find that the same forces that were tied into this group were instrumental in creating the Protocols of Zion, which were instrumental for the vicious persecution of the Jews in both Russia and Germany. And the Jews have been pushed forward to be the scapegoats, while people never know or allowed to know who is really running things behind the scenes. And then Gary Allen in his book None Dare Call It a Conspiracy, which Alex Jones, by the way, he says in his first film, America Destroyed by Design, that was one of the books that got him into this. Well, actually, in Gary Allen's None Dare Call It a Conspiracy, he actually talks about the Jesuits and their influence and everything else. I wonder, again, another piece of a damning piece of evidence against Jones. The fact that he claimed that was one of the books that woke him up, but yet never mentioned, that Gary Allen's talking about the Jesuits in there. Actually, nobody has a right to be more angry at the Rothschild clique than their fellow Jews. The Warburgs, part of the Rothschild Empire, helped finance Adolf Hitler. There were few, if any, Rothschilds or Warburgs in the Nazi prison camps. They set out the war in luxurious hotels in Paris and immigrated to the United States or England. As a group, Jews have suffered the most at the hands of these power seekers. A Rothschild has much more in common with a Rockefeller than he does with a Jewish tailor from Budapest or the Bronx. That's from Gary Allen. Why would the Jesuits use their implacable enemy, the Jews, to further the designs for world dominion? The Jesuits never do anything out of the open where they can be exposed. If they are recognized as the culprits, they will be blamed and suffer the consequences. But if they can use someone else as the cause of the world's problems, especially any enemy they can destroy in the process, then they have simultaneously accomplished two of their objectives. The Jewish people are the perfect scapegoats, as the Rothschilds are Jesuit agents operating under a Jewish cover, using them in forming the second version of the Illuminati back in 1776. The Rothschilds are certainly not the only Jesuit agents that operate under a Jewish front. That's from Bill Hughes, author of The Secret Terrorists and the Enemy Unmasked. International finance and banking are not primarily Jewish. Many of the most powerful banking interests in the world are run by Gentiles. One of the most powerful forces in international banking is the Knights of Malta, a Roman Catholic military order controlled by the Jesuit superior general. Sadly, even as a certain segment of the alternative media helps to propagate the lie that the Jews run international banking, interestingly, one of the titles of the Rothschild banking dynasty is Guardians of the Vatican's Treasury. The Jews as a people have been used for centuries as a scapegoat by those international banksters and their secret societies, such as the Jesuit-controlled Knights of Malta. To label the Jews as running banking, Hollywood, etc., is to throw the proverbial red herring designed to throw us off the scent of the real controllers. Daryl Ebhart, editor of Tackling the Tough Topics, January 20, 2006. Again, I'm reading all this. So this is from something that a listener sent me, so I'm reading some of this here on air because it's interesting stuff. Ties in what we're talking about here with the CMP and the Jesuits and the rest of it. Let's see what else is on here. There's although Winston Churchill says another argument made to convince us that the Jews or Jewish bankers are our enemy is that Winston Churchill exposed the Zionist plot behind Bolshevism. The response, although Winston Churchill did write an article in the London Illustrated Sunday Herald in 1920 claiming that Zionism was the force behind Bolshevism, the response from the world media was very strange. Most people who have attacked Zionism have been vilified, but Churchill always had favorable press coverage. Was that because he was part of the Brotherhood and his article was an attempt to shift responsibility from the Russian Revolution to the Jews? That's from Stan Monteith again. Another point is that did Jacob Schiff really help the Bolsheviks? Because of the progressive dumbing down of our people, most Americans don't realize that there were two Russian revolutions. The first revolution was in March 1917, or February if you use the old Russian calendar. The second Russian Revolution was in October of that same year. The March 1917 revolution began in St. Petersburg when a contingent of military recruits refused to fire on anti-government demonstrators. The Tsar was forced to abdicate, and Alexander Kerensky was chosen to lead Russia until elections could be held. During World War I, the American State Department was responsible for collecting intelligence information. Their files confirmed the fact that Jacob Schiff opened the Tsar. And after Kerensky had taken power, Jacob Schiff sent Kerensky a telegram congratulating him. But the Bolshevik Revolution didn't take place until 7 months later. When he examined the State Department's intelligence files, he found evidence that Jacob Schiff opposed the Bolsheviks and encouraged our State Department to oppose them as well. The document, the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, first appeared in Russia in 1905. It claimed that Zionists were behind the wars and revolutions of the 19th century and planned to seize control of the world. Many Russians believed the protocols, and they began to persecute the Jews and to destroy their property. When the Tsar refused to intervene, Jacob Schiff began plotting to depose him. He provided revolutionary literature to the Russian soldiers captured by the Japanese during the Russo-Japanese War in 1905. It is even possible that some of the soldiers who participated in the March 1917 revolution read Jacob Schiff's literature so that he may have played a part in inciting the March 1917 revolution. But that was not the Bolshevik Revolution, which occurred 7 months later. When Anthony Sutton researched the State Department intelligence files, he found documents showing that English and American financiers provided funding for the Bolsheviks, but the fact that is never mentioned today, could it be the story of Jacob Schiff's $20 million gift to the Bolsheviks? I love how they're letting Stan Monteith talk about this. You know, pitting him as if he's, you know, somehow trying to expose the Knights of Malta and stuff. I love that. It says, the editor of this, I guess this piece here, believes strongly that a sizable portion of the so-called alternative media has been misguided and duped concerning the real controllers behind the New World Order conspiracy, hereafter referred to simply as the conspiracy. Some of the alternative media may actually be working for those real controllers, trying to overly focus on the Jews and Israel, on the mark of the beast and other high-tech advances in order to keep most truth seekers from finding out who the real controllers are. A sizable section of the so-called patriot community also appears to have been misguided and duped concerning the real controllers behind the conspiracy. Some of these groups, including a major segment of the so-called Christian identity movement, concentrate a whole bunch on the Jews in general, the protocols of Zion, Israel, the Israeli Mossad, the Zionists, the so-called Jewish neocons of the current U.S. administration, Jewish Kabbalists, Jewish Bolsheviks, Jewish bankers, etc. They love to point out such and such is Jewish. But it is the vast majority of this anti-Jewish and anti-Israel propaganda instead a massive smokescreen to cover for the real controllers working behind the scenes. I don't know if it's not so much it is a smokescreen, but let's be clear here. These people are working. They're one and the same. Somebody in the chat room didn't ask me if I thought the Knights of Malta were more powerful than Zionism, and that question alone is skewed and flawed. Even the mindset behind that question is flawed. You can't say that. Yeah, I guess if you wanted to say, I guess I do believe that. I guess is the question because, and I'll tell you why. Because Zionism is not a group. Zionism is an ideology that is being carried out by many groups, the Knights of Malta being one of them. So people are getting wrapped up and trapped in the ideology. It's Zionism. Well, that's the ideology. But who's running that? Well, the Jews. Well, who are these Jews? But then when you find out they're really these Christian theocrats, these priest-class controllers from the Vatican, the Jesuit order, they're the ones that are executing this Zionism. So I want to be clear about that because, I don't want anybody to ever think that just because I talk about the Jesuits and Knights of Malta, I think that there aren't Jews involved in this, or I think that there aren't Zionists involved in this. That's a load of crap. But these guys always try to do that whenever you point out that, hey, they're not the whole totality of power. There is a power that controls them that's much bigger. And lo and behold, these people in the alternative media don't want you to ever see that. When that certain segment of the Patriot movement and that certain segment within the alternative media both tell us that the Jews are responsible for heading up the conspiracy, are they deliberately or in some cases in gross ignorance throwing out a colossal red herring to get us off the scent of the real controllers behind the scenes? Surely inquiring minds would like to know who these real controllers are that foment wars and revolutions, creating bank crises, and plan to carry out a host of nefarious activities in their drive to enslave the peoples on the planet of Earth. As Monteith pointed out in the earlier list of quotations that was taken from his book, Brotherhood of Darkness, there are many clues that have been deliberately planted to make the conspiracy appear Jewish and to divert our attention away from the truth. So let us take a look at some of the ways the real controllers who operate behind the scenes plant their evidence and their clues to make the conspiracy appear to be Jewish. One of their anti-Jewish schemes was the planting of some evidence that would lead many individuals to believe that the Jews financed and ran the Bolshevik Revolution in 1917. However, from an earlier quote, we saw that it was not Jewish financier Jacob Schiff who financed the Bolshevik Revolution of October 1917, but rather it was British and other American financiers who provided the financial banking for the Bolshevik Revolution in Russia. Another favorite tactic often used by the real controllers is to appoint a prominent Jew to head a financial institution while the major stockholders behind the scenes are non-Jews. The so-called Federal Reserve often has a Jew appointed to chairman to make it appear that Jews run the financial institutions of the United States. In fact, many of the top financiers in the U.S. have been non-Jews, to include some very powerful Roman Catholic Knights of Malta people as well. In fact, the Vatican State has some tremendous banking interests, including its own Vatican Bank. One of the many reasons for the murder of John Paul I in 1978 was his attempt to remedy the many irregularities he discovered at the Vatican Bank and his plans to fire the head of that bank. But let's get back to the Knights of Malta. The Hospitallers, later to become the Knights of Malta, were one of the three Roman Catholic religious military orders founded in the 12th century. The other two being the Knights Templar, or the Templars, and the Teutonic Knights. Concerning the Templars, we are told the following by the 1955 World Scope Encyclopedia. The Templars were founded in Jerusalem. The new order was given lodgings near the so-called Temple of Solomon. It was formally confirmed by Pope Honorius II in 1128. The order became the international bankers of their time. That's absolutely true. They were the predecessors of the great banking families, such as the Medici. The Templars were brought down by King Philip IV of France and Pope Clement V. The order was disbanded in 1312, and much of their great wealth was given to the Knights of St. John, which later became the Knights of Malta. This is very important to remember, that this Roman Catholic military order, the Knights of Malta, which is co-located with the Jesuit Superior General in Rome, inherited much of their great wealth from the Knights Templar, and that's absolutely true. Another favorite tactic of the real controllers is to throw out the Rothschild family as the major Jewish family running international banking. However, we've already seen that in one of the titles held by the Rothschild, Guardians of the Vatican's Treasury. Let's not forget what author Gary Allen said. A Rothschild has much more in common with the Rockefeller than he does with the Jewish tailor from Budapest or the Bronx. Here's what two authors had to say about the Rothschilds. Aware that the Rothschilds are an important Jewish family, I looked them up in the Encyclopedia Judaica and discovered that they bear the title Guardians of the Vatican's Treasury. The appointment of Rothschild gave the Black Papacy, i.e. the hierarchy of the Jesuit order, absolute financial privacy and secrecy. Who would ever search for a family of Orthodox Jews for the keys to the wealth of the Roman Catholic Church? F. Tupper Saucy, author of the book Rulers of Evil, speaker, musician, and patriot. The Rothschilds were Jesuits who used their Jewish background as a facade to cover the red shield. Give me a fucking break. The Templar shield, where do you think that name comes from, people? Pull your head out of your asses, please. A certain segment within the Patriot movement and within the alternative media loves to tell us that Trotsky and many of the top Soviet Communist parties members were Jews, and then to tell us their Jewish names. But what they seldom mention is that all but one of the top Jews in the powerful Politburo were executed. Trotsky himself was hunted down in Mexico and murdered there. Some Jews were also appointed as camp commandants within the Soviet Gulag system. Again, we seem to find a pattern. Put some Jews in positions as mid-level or even upper-level level managers, and then folks will think that the whole operation is Jewish. It says, however, if the Jews funded and ran the Bolshevik Revolution of 1917, then why in blazes would they kill all but one of the Jews in the Soviet Politburo? One could also ask the following questions. Number one, if the Jews fomented and orchestrated World War II, then why would Jews be especially targeted for destruction on the European continent? Number two, if the Jews run America's mainstream media and Hollywood, then why does the Pope of Rome get such great press here in the U.S.? Pope John Paul II was almost deified in the American press, both while alive and during his funeral. Number three, if the Jews control so much of the American publishing business, then why don't they massively expose the Roman Catholic Church's involvement in bringing Hitler to power? Great question. Supporting Nazi Germany, supporting fascist Italy, supporting fascist Croatia, helping war criminals escape at the end of World War II via the Vatican rat lines, etc. Yes, and why don't these Jews controlling America's publishing houses massively expose the Jesuit order, which has a well-documented history of not only fomenting wars and revolutions, but also being responsible for the killing of large numbers of Jews? The modern-day version of the Illuminati was formed on May 1st, 1776 by Jesuit-trained Adam Weishaupt, who taught Catholic canon law at Jesuit Ingolstadt University in Bavaria. Weishaupt pretended to leave the Jesuit order, i.e. he was sheep-dipped, so that he could set up a front group called the Illuminati that the Jesuits could use for their own purposes. The Jesuit front group, the Illuminati, fomented and orchestrated the bloody French Revolution of 1789 to 1799, and thus by using this front group, the Jesuit order was given a great degree of plausible deniability as to its role in the French Revolution. Yes, there is a certain segment within both the Patriot movement and the alternative media that loves to say Weishaupt was a Jew, thus inferring that the Illuminati must surely have been set up by the Jews. And, God, man, I can't tell you how many times I've seen that. People supposedly making these films about the Illuminati, not a damn one of them yet's really exposed what it is, the Los Alumbrados Society. That's what it originated from. But again, a listener sent me this and wanted me to read this, so I'm reading this on air. That's why, don't think that I reflect everything that I read on air, but I think there is some good stuff in here. We already noted how Jesuit trained Adam Weishaupt is portrayed by a number of folks as being a Jew. According to Eric John Phelps, author of Vatican Assassins, Weishaupt was not a Jew, and this labeling him a Jew is a fairly recent invention of the past 100 years. Regardless, the facts are that Weishaupt was Jesuit trained and that he taught Roman Catholic canon law at a Jesuit Institute of Higher Learning in Bavaria. Why don't most people that point out Weishaupt was allegedly a Jew also point out his Jesuit connections? Why don't these same individuals also point out that Weishaupt died in the good graces of the Roman Catholic Church? Indeed, labeling various monstrous criminals as Jews seems to be the favorite tactic of those who really control things from behind the scenes, a tactic used to make the conspiracy appear Jewish when the real controllers seem to come primarily from the top levels of secret society, such as the Jesuits and the Freemasons, and from within the Vatican State itself. We've already pointed out that the Protocols of Zion, according to Leo Lehman, was written by the Jesuits. The Protocols, remember, was a document designed, according to Dr. Stan Monteith, to make people think the Zionists were behind the wars and revolutions of the 19th century and planned to seize control of the world. The public is practically unaware of the overwhelming responsibility carried by the Vatican and its Jesuits in the starting of two world wars, a situation which may be explained in part by the gigantic finances at the disposition of the Vatican and its Jesuits, giving the power in so many spheres, especially since the last conflict. Are the Jews running the U.S. intelligence community, as some would have us believe, or is there a much more powerful group of men working behind the scenes? Are these the real controllers of the U.S. intelligence agency? An important fact that one does discover if he looks closely behind the curtain is that there are many Knights of Malta who have been top men in the intelligence community. Remember, the Knights of Malta is a Roman Catholic military order under the direct command of the Black Pope, i.e. the Jesuit Superior General. That's his name, the Jesuit Superior. It's a military name. He's the general. During World War II, we find three Knights of Malta running top intelligence agencies. William Wild Bill Donovan, the Office of Strategic Services, the OSS, predecessor to the CIA, General Reinhard Gehlen, German intelligence on the Eastern Front. These guys are all Knights of Malta, and Prince Anton Turkel, who used Jesuits for couriers when he was head of Soviet intelligence. Interestingly, at least 5 directors of the CIA have been Knights of Malta: William Donovan, John McCone, William Casey, William Colby, and George Tenet. Additionally, the longtime head of the very powerful CIA counterintelligence section and head of CIA's Vatican desk was a Knight of Malta by the name of James Jesus Angleton. Angleton was also the CIA liaison to the Warren Commission that investigated the assassination of President Kennedy. I mean, you could make a whole film. I may do that at some point. You could make a whole film on the connections to, the priest class and the Knights of Malta and the Jesuits that killed Kennedy. I mean, my goodness. Other Knights of Malta have held key positions within the international intelligence community, such as Britain's intelligence agency Kim Philby, who also worked for the Soviet KGB. And this is sort of the summary here. It says, and it goes on and on, but you can read this, and I'll have Ben Hodger, he can put it up on the web. But anyway, I want to thank some good stuff in there. But basically the point is that, and I've been exposing this for almost 4 years now, And hopefully this, for those of you who may be new to this information or found me through Red Ice or whatever, this may give you a little bit more to go on. There is a whole other level of everything you've been told about this research. And yes, there are Jews involved in it. Yes, there are Catholics involved in it. But all of this is one big amalgamation. And they use different groups to achieve different parts of the plan. But good stuff there. And thanks to Cygirl for sending that in to us. And we'll get that on the website. And you can read that the rest of that stuff in your own time there. GlobalRealityShow@gmail.com. If you've got stuff you want to send in, you've got questions, anything tonight, excuse me, I'd be happy to try and get into those for you here tonight on the show. Again, my website where this broadcast originates from, theglobalreality.com. We are going to take a break, come back, and when we get back from the break, we'll get into the news of tonight. And after we get into the news of tonight, we will get into the Lost Book of Inky for you as well. Oh, that's weird. Technical difficulties here. Well, I guess we're back. I guess I had another song queued up. I don't think it played. That was weird. So strange. Anyway, we're back here on the show, and I wasn't quite ready to come back yet. But nonetheless, we are back here with you on the show. Yeah. So strange. But thanks for being here with us tonight for another edition of the Global Reality right here on the Global Reality Radio Network. We're going to be getting into some news in this segment of the broadcast. I'd love to have emails from you as well. GlobalRealityShow@gmail.com. That's GlobalRealityShow@gmail.com. If you've got emails and you got questions, you got stuff like that you want to send in tonight, definitely feel free to do that. I'll do my best to get into them here on the show. Yeah, we're still recording. Everything's still good to go on that front. It was just, I don't know what happened. That's weird. If I need to pee, play another tune. Thanks. Oh yeah, that's not so much a problem now. I mean, it used to be when I was, back when I was on Oracle and stuff. God damn. Try to smoke a cigarette, caveman a sandwich, and take a shit while you're doing a 4-hour broadcast with commercials. That's a lot of fun. Here's an email just got in. It says, Bloomberg's daughter, either the 1% or Born Rich films by Jamie Johnson of Johnson & Johnson. There is this one scene in her car when Bloomberg's daughter says, while in the Hamptons, talking about the Hamptons lifestyle at country clubs, I probably wouldn't bring a Jewish friend to the country club or it would be a problem. This stuck with me because the way she said it, it sounded like and as if she were not Jewish, which I thought was very strange. I think everybody would assume the Bloombergs were Jewish. And, I know the Bloombergs, all Knights of Malta, all the way across the board. Interesting stuff there. Thanks to MJ for sending me that over. Let me see. I don't think I've got any other, here's one that says, things you should know. Knights of Malta claim to America was through Columbus. Freemasonry claim to America was the tribe of Manasseh, or Manasseh, or Manasseh, or I don't know how you say that. Manasseh, Manessah, okay. Same person says, could you do a program on astrotheology, stellar cults, solar cults, lunar cults? Oh man, I've done that a lot in the past. There's probably, if you can go to archive.org. Archive.org is a great place to find old shows of mine that are posted up there. Just go there and type Josh Reeves into archive.org and you find a lot of shows. I've done a lot of stuff on that in the past, and it's not really something I really feel the need to go back into. There's plenty of that stuff out there. Tesarian gets into a lot of that good stuff, and you can check out a lot of people's info on that. Because all I'd probably be doing is just getting up here and repeating a lot of people who's already done work on that, and I just really don't want to do that. But there is something to it if that's what you're asking, yeah. So yeah, I don't really see any other thing. Somebody said, Josh, haven't you heard the United States of America is a legal fiction? So who cares the people who create it bring it down for any reason? I don't now have any love for an artificial entity created by the league, whatever they are. Josh, are you still attached to this America concept? No. But it's you still have to talk about the fact that the people who created it are bringing it down by design, and that it's going to affect those of us who live in it. So I don't know why you would think that I thought that. I don't know. That's strange. GlobalRealityShow@gmail.com. That's my email address. Anytime you want to send anything in, that's where you can send it in at. We don't have a goal set for this week for the chip and banner or anything. That is located at my website where this broadcast originates from, theglobalreality.com. We don't have commercials. We don't have banner ads or anything else. I've been doing a weekly goal thing now starting last week, which, helps us because sometimes people don't know what we need. So I've been doing that, and it helped last week. I think the only bill I have to pay this week is the stream bill. I think that's coming up due tomorrow or something. If anybody wants to pitch in on that. But the main thing I'm trying to get people to help us out on right now is just getting some cash in so we can get a new camera to finish this film. And as you can see by the information we covered in the last segment, that's why that's why it's been so hard for me to get this film finished. Number one, monetary reasons, money reasons, and equipment going tits up on me and everything else. But I mean, there's just so much information, and I've been trying to go back and make and because I'm still I've been researching this stuff for 4 years, but I still in no way, shape, or form know everything there is to know about it. I know more than a lot of people do just because I've been looking at it so long. But, it's a constant learning process for me, researching this stuff, making these films and everything else. So I guess my biggest concern right now is making sure that I get everything that is important into the film. And like I said, as you could tell by the last segment there, there's a lot to this. But again, and just, we need to get this out. We need to get this done. So please support us if you can. Use the donate button, chip in banner, and hopefully we can get close to what we need to get a new camera going. My other one just died. Well, the takes still pictures, but it just shuts off right as soon as you start a video. It shoots for about 10 seconds and just shuts off, and I can't figure out any way to fix it. I bought it refurbished, anyway, but I'm just having trouble finding anything comparable to it for around the same price. And I need to, I need, if I'm going to be doing this, man, I need to have good equipment, and that's been our biggest problem. I've been doing this on crap equipment for the whole time I've been going. And, the sad part of it is that people are so conditioned by slick media. If you don't present them with slick media, it doesn't matter how good your information is. It's not going to get wide spectrum, exposure. So that's another thing I'm trying to fight against. So please support us if you can there at the website. Not a lot of news today, but I think probably the biggest, most important news story here today to cover is the fact that Venezuelan President Hugo Chavez said Wednesday that he will nationalize the gold industry, including extraction and processing, and use its output to boost the country's international reserves. The move follows a dispute between his government and foreign miners who say the rules limiting the amount of gold that can be exported from the South American nation hurt the efforts to secure financing and create jobs. Toronto-listed Resoro, owned by Russia's Agapov family, is the only large gold miner operating in Venezuela. It produces 100,000 ounces per year. Now, this is, with everything else we've already got going on financially, this is another big play. And there's no telling what the bankers are going to stage now. Looking at this, I mean, he wants. Venezuela holds 211 tons of its 365 tons of gold reserves in U.S., European, Canadian, Swiss institutions, and J.P. Morgan Chase, Barclays PLC, Standard Chartered PLC, and the Bank of Nova Scotia also hold Venezuelan gold. And the problem is that they don't have it. They don't have near what he's asking for. This is going to be a huge, gigantic debacle. It'll be funny to see how this plays out. We've held 99 tons of gold at the Bank of England since 1980. I agree with bringing that home. It's a healthy decision, Chavez said yesterday on state television. Chavez, whose government depends on oil for 95% of export revenue, is looking to diversify Venezuela's cash reserves from the U.S. and European banks to include investments in emerging markets, including Brazil, China, India, Russia, and South Africa. Central Bank President Nelson Morentis said yesterday Chavez, whose nation is the world's 15th largest gold holder, is bringing back the reserves after a 26% rally in price this year. The central bank already has about $7 billion of gold in its vaults of the country's liquid reserves, which amount to about $6.3 billion. 59% are held in Switzerland, 18% in the UK, and 11.3% in the US, according to a government report. So essentially, in all, Venezuela has 365.8 metric tons of gold reserves. And, these bankers are going to have fun trying to cough that up. They'll probably be sending him the tungsten salted bars. It's going to be interesting to watch how this whole thing plays out here. Man, oh man, oh man. It's going to get real interesting now. World population will reach 7 billion this year, says study. Oh, don't worry. They've got plenty of depopulation agendas planned for that. Nothing to worry your little head about there. Mercury-loving bugs speed up help for toxic spills. This is interesting. Scientists say they have engineered bacteria that can mop up mercury, a step forward in the goal of using remediation to cleanse toxic chemicals from the environment. Mercury pollution of water and soil by industrial spills or gold mining is a major hazard because the chemical accumulates up the food chain, and tackling the problem is prohibitively expensive. Every time I read something about some new, bug or microbe that's going to clean up the environment, I mean, I don't know. It just smells like some science fiction movie waiting to happen, doesn't it? I mean, my God, you guys heard about this brain-eating bacteria that's going around two kids have died from already? You're going to sit there and tell me that's not the result of some sort of biological weapon or engineering or something else. I mean, goodness. Mossad plotted to harm Egyptian fertility. Speaking of eugenics here, Israeli citizen Ofer Harari, recently accused by Egypt of spying for Israel, was allegedly involved in a complicated scheme intended to harm Egyptian reproduction abilities. Egyptian's official state paper Al Ahram has claimed Harari, accused by Egypt of being an agent of the Mossad, is said to be tried in absentia on charges of spying for a foreign country with the purpose of harming Egyptian national interests, news agency MENA reported on Sunday. Jordanian Ibrahim Abu Zaid, a telecoms engineer reportedly involved in the affair as well, was arrested in Egypt. Now listen to this. According to the public prosecutor's office investigation, Mossad agent Ophir Harari instructed Jordanian Ibrahim Abu Zaid to set up a company in Egypt which would exclusively import an Israeli hair product for both men and women, which causes infertility. This in order to completely destroy Egyptian reproduction abilities. Now, they're talking about using this in Egypt now. My God, how long have they been using it elsewhere? Probably using it on us right now. And you all have looked at the back of a shampoo bottle or something. And there's fucking words on there as long as your fucking forearm, man. Anything as long as your forearm, probably with a name as long as your forearm, probably shouldn't be going in or on your body, don't you think? The report also asserted that the Mossad supposedly required that Abu Zaid open communications company in Sudan and Libya so as to enable Israel to follow communication traffic in both countries. That's, that's how they roll, man. That's classic Mossad stuff right there. Oh, this is the article I was looking for concerning the Chavez thing. Sorry, I moved on, but I'm going to go back to this because I want to read this article. This is from ETF Daily News. Okay, let the fun begin. Today, Venezuelan President Hugo Chavez announced that it planned to nationalize his country's gold mining industry in an attempt to increase its national reserves. This is not an unprecedented move. He has already nationalized the banking industry, telecommunications companies, the oil fields, the producers of power for the country, and millions of acres of farmland. President Chavez said that the nationalization of the gold industry was to protect the people of Venezuela from having their gold fall into the hands of the mafia and smugglers. Oh, where is... I still doesn't have... Oh, here it is. This is what I was looking for. While Venezuela is a relatively minor player on the world stage, this could be a big game changer here in the United States because one of the banks that holds 10.6 tons of Venezuela's gold is none other than J.P. Morgan. Now listen to this. This is what I was trying to get at. In a recent audit of J.P. Morgan's holdings, it was reported that they held 338,303 ounces of gold, or roughly 10.6 tons. While this is a modest-sized deposit, it is sure to cause some jitters at J.P. Morgan as they scramble to find the replacement gold, which has already been pledged about 100 times over across various paper markets to ETFs like the SPDR Gold ETF. Oddly, I had a conversation with one of my readers yesterday about this concerns of holding ETFs that lease the gold that he purports to own. So, I mean, they've spread this gold out 100 times over. He's wanted it back. They don't have it. What's going to happen here? It's going to get interesting. Going to be interesting to watch. We talked earlier in the show about, because again, von Braun is Werner von Braun, ex-head of the Nazi space program, brought over here after World War II to head up NASA or Project Paperclip. Often misquoted in his statement to his secretary Carol Rosen about first the threat would be terrorism, third world or communism, then would be terrorism, third world crazies, then it would be asteroids. Hey, we've seen the asteroid threat. We're definitely ramping that up. And then aliens, and then everybody in the Patriot Movement, Truth Movement. I have to reiterate this over and over again because it's very important. Have taken that and bastardized his statement and said that von Braun predicted a staged alien invasion, but that's not what he said. He did not say they would fake an alien invasion. He said they would tell us that non-hostile aliens that were here to help us heal and mend and fix the planet, which would bring down the New World Order, which would bring down the power structure, were actually hostile, and we needed to weaponize space against them. Now, we've seen the Department of Defense official numbers, fiscal year 2008, 2009, 2010, 2011. We've been spending more on space-based weapons over the past 4 or 5 years than have ever been spent in the entire history of those things. This with the ramp up of, aliens or hostile aliens are coming in every movie. I mean, there's 3 or 4 movies out, 6 or 7 or 8 movies out this year. More coming, TV shows on hostile aliens, Discovery Channel shows on that. So interesting article here. I don't know how much truth there is to this, but it's interesting in light of that, so I'll read it anyway. A group of prominent Russian scientists, including Russian cosmonaut Dr. Marina Popovich, PhD, as well as Victoria Popova and Lydia Andronov, PhD, have announced a discovery of extraterrestrial communications and pictograms that extraterrestrial intelligence have placed in crop circles and stone monuments all over the world. The group has created a dictionary of over 250 extraterrestrial pictograms for interpreting crop circles and stone monuments. They say that the extraterrestrial civilizations warn that the weakening of Earth's magnetic field has reached a critical value. Now, I've talked about that a lot this year because we've seen a lot of evidence that Earth is losing its magnetic field. They've had to repaint lines on runways at airports, and there's a lot of stuff that indicates that. So maybe there is something to it. And this threatens the life of mankind. ETC instructions in crop circles indicate how to escape from global cataclysms, which will begin very soon. The Russian scientist group states that the extraterrestrial pictograms communicate that extraterrestrial civilizations, ETCs, predict 3 preliminary catastrophes followed by global cataclysms of a magnitude beyond anything experienced in living memory. There will be a short time period between all of these events. They continue, ETCs warn that civilization will be pre-informed about a scenario of global cataclysms before the beginning of the event. A civilization that is not informed has no chance to make the transition in time and to prolong life. First pre-cataclysm will be related with the interruption of global systems of communication, phone, internet. Pre-informed civilizations will avoid shock and chaos of super powerful disaster as a chance to make the transition in time. The Russian scientist group emphasizes that this is a natural cycle of the planet. Part of this process is the development of human consciousness to a point where humanity will have a window of opportunity to make the transition to a higher plane of existence. They explain that this point in history can be seen as a kind of graduation for humanity to a higher and more subtle level of experience, a type of metamorphosis for humanity connected with ascension. Nobody can be saved individually, as the transition can be made only through the synchronous unification of human consciousness. Now, I don't believe that either. That sounds like a load of horse crap to me. I mean, everything that I've seen in my research, my experience has said that it says we as individuals have to get our minds and our souls and our energy and everything to a point where we can ascend. If every single human being doesn't unify in collective consciousness, then we're all going to die. Yeah, that sounds like New World Order stuff to me. The Russian scientist group states that the time for humans to escape the devastation through the unification of consciousness will be shortly after the first pre-cataclysm. After a second pre-catastrophe, humanity will have no choice to prolong life because the number of people remaining alive will not be enough to start up the mechanism of the transition. In the future, humanity will join a galactic community of evolved extraterrestrial civilizations linked through consciousness. Interesting stuff there. Yeah, I don't know how much that I believe, but I'll read it on my show anyway. What the hell? Let's see what else we have. When debris rained from the sky in lower Manhattan on September 11, 2001, the first responders to the terrorist attack did not turn away. They rushed to the World Trade Center buildings while the world around them crumbled. Yet now, after all the wreckage has been cleared and the rebuilding has begun, their path is again blocked, not by flying chunks of smoldering rubble, but by space constraints. It's from CNN. So they're not going to let the first responders be at the 9/11 ceremony. Isn't that great? These guys are dying from all kinds of diseases and everything else. They're not going to let them be there. The guys who watch their friends and their buddies die going up in those towers are not going to allow to be at the ceremony. I wonder why. Probably because a lot of those guys are going to be talking about and telling people about, stuff like, explosions happening before planes ever hit the goddamn buildings. Stuff like that. So to make sure you keep the witnesses, the people who are still alive that were there, that saw things happen that don't add up to the official story, out of the picture so they don't talk to anybody and, let them know there's actually something to this. The first responders are not invited to this year's September 11th memorial ceremony at Ground Zero. New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg's office confirmed on Monday. It's a painful insult for many of the approximately 3,000 men and women who risked their lives, limbs, and lungs on that monumental day, puncturing another hole in a still searing wound. In a statement, Bloomberg spokesman Andrew Bent said the commemoration ceremony is for the victims' families. Well, some of these guys were victims. They saw their buddies die going in this stuff. I mean, so who the hell are they to say who's a victim and who's not? Aren't these firefighters and these first responders who watch their firefighter buddies and police buddies die, aren't they victims too? While we are again focused on accommodating victims' family members, given the space constraints, we're working to find ways to recognize and honor first responders and other groups at different places and times. But first responder John Field, oh, there you go. Well, that's why Field's been, very active in the truther community. That's there's your explanation as to why they're not going to let them down there. I was right. John Field, founder of an advocacy group for the police officers, firefighters, civilian volunteers, and others who worked at Ground Zero, assailed Brent's response, saying Bloomberg lives in his own world. The best of the best that this country offered 10 years ago are being neglected and denied their rightful place, Field said. Denise Villamia, a first responder who worked at Ground Zero for several months, cried over the phone as she recalled her totally heartbroken reaction to the news that she could not attend the memorial service. I'm crying because it's a really big betrayal on the part of the city to rob me from my way to pay homage and to find that comfort and healing, she said. I feel that I've been robbed of my way to pay tribute. In addition to the victims' families, several politicians, including 2 presidents, are expected to be in attendance. Yeah, everybody said, there's going to be a nuclear attack on 9/11 this year. It's going to be Al Qaeda Part 2. I don't know, man. I just don't. Could be. I've been wrong before, but I just don't see them launching another attack on 9/11 this year. I mean, I could be wrong about that. If it happens, I'll be the first one to get up here and say I was wrong, but I don't know, man. I just don't see that. It's going to happen. Whatever's going to happen is going to happen when nobody's expecting it. They've been saying that for a long time. I think we've just about gotten through all of the news. A Virginia school has banned a book on the legendary sleuth Sherlock Holmes for how it portrays the Mormon faith. This is unbelievable. Last week, the Albemarle County School Board removed Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's first Sherlock Holmes novel, A Study in Scarlet, from its 6th grade reading list. Several former middle school students opposed the removal of the Victorian-era text, one calling it the best book I've read so far, but the mystery novel was nonetheless booted. Back in May, a parent of Henley Middle School student complained that the story painted a poor, derogatory picture of Mormons. A Study in Scarlet has been used to introduce students to the mystery genre for years. This is our young students' first inaccurate introduction to an American religion. Doesn't say what they had a problem with, though. Oh, here we go. The problematic themes revolve around a long flashback set in 1847 Utah. A large group of Mormons led by Brigham Young himself are depicted as raw crackpots, their religion as primitive and vindictive. The group discovers a man and child on the brink of death by dehydration and offers to help them so long as they adopt the Mormon faith. Well, look, it's a fact, absolute fact, that Mormonism was set up as a front to practice Freemasonry in secret at a time in which Freemasonry was outlawed in the United States. That's a fact. If you talk to anybody who's Mormon, they'll tell you they have degrees and initiations and rituals just like Freemasonry. Why? Because it's one and the same. But you notice how it's becoming, can't say anything about the Mormons now. Why is it that Mormons and Scientologists seem to be the two main groups you can't say anything about? These guys, all of these religions, all set up by people of these same bloodlines that set up every other religion around the world. They're all just fronts for the same thing. Period. End of story. Has anyone ever seen more than approximately 8 to 10 victims' families together in one place from 9/11? No, probably not. Don't even get me started on that. There's all kinds of shit with 9/11 and that still doesn't fly. All right. Well, we're going to take a break, come back, and when we come back, we're going to be getting into, that's all the news tonight. We're going to be getting into the Lost Book of Enki. We're going to be picking up where we left off last night. The account of the deluge that swept over the earth and how the Anunnaki escaped it and how Zisidra survived in the boat. I'm going to try and get through as much of this as I can tonight. So we'll take a break, come back, and get into more of that for you here. This is the Global Reality. Back here with you on the Global Reality, right here on the Global Reality Radio Network. I'm your host, Josh Reeves. Thanks for being with us here tonight for another live edition of the broadcast. In this segment of the show, we're going to be getting into our continued series of reading of the Lost Book of Enki. And without further ado, we're going to jump right into that right now. Now, this is the account of the deluge that swept over the earth and how the Anunnaki escaped and how Zisidra survived in the boat. For days before the day of the deluge, the earth was rumbling and it groaned with pain. For nights before the calamity struck in the heavens, Nibiru was seen as a glowing star. Then there was darkness in the daytime, and at night, the moon looked as though it was swallowed by a monster. The earth began to shake by a net force unknown. It was agitated. In the glow of dawn, a black cloud arose from the horizon. The morning's light changed to darkness as though it was veiled by death's shadow. Then the sound of a rolling thunder boomed and lightning lit up the skies. Sounds like a Led Zeppelin song. Mountains and the canyons start to tremble and shake. Children of the sun began to wake. I don't know why it just instantly sort of like, wow, that sounds very familiar. The sound of rolling thunder boomed and lightnings lit up the sky. Depart, depart. Utu gave the signal to the Anunnaki. Crouched in the boats of heaven, the Anunnaki were lofted heavenward. In Shurabak, 18 leagues away, the bright eruptions were seen by Ninagal. Button up the hatch, Ningal to Zisidra shouted. Together, the trap door that concealed the hatch, they pulled down. Watertight and completely enclosed was the boat. Inside, not a ray of light penetrated. On that day, on that unforgettable day, the deluge began with a roar. In the white land at Earth's bottom, the Earth's foundations were shaking. Then, with a roar, to 1,000 thunders equal, off its foundations, the ice sheet slipped. By Nibiru's unseen net force, it was pulled away and sent southward into the sea, crashing. One ice sheet into another was smashing. The white land surface, I guess they're talking about the poles, was like a broken eggshell. All at once, a tidal wave arose. The very skies were a wall of water. A storm, its ferocity never before seen, began to howl at Earth's bottom. Its winds, the wall of water were driving. The tidal wave northward was spreading. Northward was the wall of waters onrushing. The Abzu lands it was reaching. Therefrom toward the settled lands it traveled. It overwhelmed the Eden. When the tidal wave, the wall of water Shurabak reached, the boat of Zisidra lifted from the moorings on the tidal wave, tossed it about like a watery abyss. It swallowed the boat. Though completely submerged, the boat held firm. Not a drop of water did enter it. Outside, the storm's wave overtook the people like a killing battle. No one could see his fellow man. The ground vanished. There was only water. All that once on the ground stood by the mighty waters was swept away. Before day's end, the watery wall, gathering speed, overwhelmed the mountains. In their celestial boats, the Anunnaki were circling. Crowding the compartments against the outer walls, they crouched. What was happening upon the earth, down below to see, they strained. From the celestial boat in which she was, Ninmah, like a woman in travail, cried out. My created, like drowned dragonflies in a pond, fill the waters. All life by the rolling sea wave was taken away. Thus Ninmah did cry and moan. Inanna, who was also with her, also cried and lamented. Everything down below, all that lived, has turned to clay. Thus did Ninmah and Inanna weep. They wept and eased their feelings. In the other celestial boats, the Anunnaki, by the sight of the unbridled fury, were humbled. A power greater than theirs they witnessed with awe. For the fruits of earth they hungered. For fermented elixir they thirsted. The olden days, alas, have turned to clay, so the Anunnaki to each other said. After the immense tidal wave that swept over the earth, the sluices of heaven opened, and a downpour from the skies was unleashed upon the earth. For 7 days the water from above with the waters of the great below were mingled. Then the wall of water reached its limits, and the onslaught ceased. But the rains from the skies for 40 more days and nights continued. From their perches the Anunnaki looked down. Where there were dry lands, now was a sea of water. And where mountains once to the heavens raised their peaks, their tops were now like islands in the water. And all that was on dry lands that was living in the avalanche perished in the waters. Then, as in the beginning, the waters to their basins were gathered. Waving back and forth day by day, the water level came lower. Then, 40 days after the deluge over the earth swept, the rains also stopped. After the 40 days, Desidera's boat hatch opened, and he surveyed his whereabouts. A bright day it was, a gentle breeze was blowing. All alone, with no other sign of life, the boat upon a vast sea was lolling. Mankind and all living things off the earth's face are wiped out. No one except us few survived, but there is no dry land to set a foot upon. So Desidera did say to his kinfolk as he sat down and lamented. At that time, Nanagal was appointed by Enki and directed the boat toward the twin peaks of Arata. A sail he shaped for her toward the Mount of Salvation. He guided the boat. Impatient Desidera was, birds that were on board he released. He sent them to check for dry land and to verify for surviving vegetation. He sent forth a swallow. He sent forth a raven. Both to the boat returned. He sent forth a dove with a twig from a tree, and it returned. It returned to the boat with a twig from a tree. Now Desidera knew that the dry land had emerged from under the waters. A few more days and the boat was arrested by rocks. The deluge is over. At the Mount of Salvation we are. So Nanagal did say to Desidera. Opening the watertight hatch, Desidera emerged from the boat. The sky was clear, the sun was shining, and a gentle wind was blowing. Hurriedly, he called upon his spouse and children. The Lord Enki, let us praise. To him give thanks. With his son stones he gathered, and with them he built an altar. And then on that altar he lit a fire with aromatic incense. A lamb, one without blemish, was selected for a sacrifice. Here we go. Here's the beginning of it all right here. And upon the altar to Enki, he offered the lamb as a sacrifice. At that time, Enlil, from his celestial boat, conveyed these words to Enki. Let us in whirlwinds from the celestial boats upon the peak of Arata descend. The situation to review and determine what needs to be done. While the others in their celestial boats continued to circuit around the earth, meaning they were continued to orbit around the earth in the spacecraft. Enlil and Enki in whirlwinds upon the peak descended on Arata. Smiling, the two brothers met. With joy, their arms they locked. Then Enlil, by the whiffs of fire and roasting meat, was puzzled. What is that? To his brother he shouted. Has anyone survived the deluge? Let us go and see, meekly to him Enki responded. In their whirlwinds, they flew over the other peak of Arata. They saw the boat of Zisudra, and by the altar that he had built, they landed. When Enlil saw the survivals, Nanagal among them, his fury had no bounds. Every earthling had to perish, he shouted with fury. And he lunged at Enki with anger. To kill his brother with his bare hands, he was ready. He is no mere mortal, my son he is, Enki. To Zisudra pointed, crying out. For a moment, Enlil was hesitating. You broke your oath. At Enki he shouted. To a reed wall I spoke, not to Zisudra, Enki said. And then he related his dream vision to Enlil. By then, Ningal has been alerted, and Ninurta and Ninmah also touched down in their whirlwinds. When they heard the account of the events, Ninurta and Ninmah were not angered by the account. The survival of mankind must be the will of the Creator of all. So Ninurta did say to his father. Ninmah, her necklace of crystals, a gift from Anu, touched and swore. On my oath, the annihilation of mankind shall never be repeated. Now that's sort of an interesting phrase, isn't it, in terms of this 2012 fear-mongering and the return of the Anunnaki and the Nibiru and all this stuff. Ramping this, because that's the common held belief that the Anunnaki are going to come down and enslave us and kill us all, and they're going to return, and we're going to have to fight against them and stuff. But it distinctly says that they have sworn that they will never repeat the annihilation of mankind. But yet, that's what we hear is constantly this, this idea, this threat of hostile aliens. You see. Relenting, Enlil, by the hands of Zisudra and Imzara, took his spouse and blessed them thus. Be fruitful and multiply, and replenish the earth. Aha! There's that Genesis reference. Yeah, twice in one show. Isn't that interesting? That's synchronistic, isn't it? See, I didn't know that was going to be in here. That's exactly the phrase that the Christian dominionists bastardize and use to justify the idea of dominionism. Be fruitful and multiply and have dominion over everything on the sea and on the land and everything else. And that's their whole basis of that. That's interesting that would be their bastardization of that would predate biblical things and go all the way back to these Sumerian texts. But that's it right there. Be fruitful, multiply, and replenish the earth and have dominion over everything over the sea and land. It's a bastardization of that. But right there where we find that the origins of that statement taken from the book of Genesis come from, be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth, comes from them saying that, it was the divine will of the Creator that mankind must survive. not the divine will of the Creator that, Christian Reconstructionists have to control the world, otherwise Jesus is not going to come back. I mean, give me a fucking break. And that's the whole, that sums up the whole reason why I've read any of this stuff, is stuff like that, really seeing this stuff for what it really is and what it really means. Thus were the olden times ended. Now, this is the account of how survival on earth was restored and how a new source of gold and other earthlings beyond the oceans were found. It was after the encounter at Arata that the waters of the deluge continued to recede, and the face of the earth was gradually showing from under the waters. The mountain lands were mostly unscathed, but the valleys under the mud and silt were buried. From the celestial boats and from the whirlwinds, the Anunnaki surveyed the landscapes. All that in the olden times in the Eden and the Abzu had existed under the mud was buried. Eridu, Nibiru Ki, Shurabak, Sipar, all were gone, completely vanished. But in the Cedar Mountains, the great stone platform glistened in the sunlight. The landing place in the olden times established was still standing. Oh, that's because Peru is in a higher level of elevation. That's what they're talking about, the whole Peru and the Nazca Lines area, yeah. It's at a higher elevation. It wasn't affected. One after another, the whirlwinds landed upon the platform. The platform was intact at the launch corner. The huge stone blocks held firm. Clearing debris and tree branches away, the first to land, the chariots signaled. One after the other, the celestial chariots came and touched down upon the platform. Then to Marduk on Lamu, Mars, and Nanar on the moon, words were sent. And they too returned to earth. Upon the landing place, they came down. Now the Anunnaki and the Igigi, who were thus gathered by Enlil to assembly, were called. The deluge we have survived, but the earth is devastated, Enlil did say to them. All ways to recover we must assess, be it on earth or be it elsewhere. Aha, so they're talking about, that's interesting, isn't it? Is that an allusion to the possibility that these Anunnaki took their earthling creations and took them and also put them on other places and other planets? Very well could be. Let us assess ways to recover, be it on Earth or be it elsewhere or anywhere else, you see. Maybe they'll iterate more on that later in the reading here. Mars was also devastated by the passage of Nibiru, Marduk did relate. Its atmosphere was sucked out, and its waters thereafter evaporated, and now it is a place of dust storms. The moon itself cannot sustain life. Only with eagle masks is staying enabled. So did Nanar to the others give the account. And then the words of Anamur he added. Once there, that it was Tiamat's host leader, one must recall. Of Earth, a companion it is. With Earth's destiny, it is connected. Lovingly Enlil put his arm on his son's shoulders. With survival, we are now concerned. So did Enlil mildly retort to Nanar, now sustenance is our first concern. Let us examine the sealed creation chamber. Perchance Nibiru's seeds we shall still find. Enlil said to Enki, of the grains that once created of him by him reminded him. At the side of the platform, clearing some mud, the shaft from times remote they found. The stone that blocked it they lifted off, the sanctuary they entered. The diorite chests with seals were fastened. The seals with a copper key they made open. Inside the chests, in crystal vessels, the seeds of Nibiru's grain were there. Once outside, Enlil gave the seeds to Ninurta and said to him, "Go to the mountainside terrace. Let the grains of Nibiru once again provide bread." In the Cedar Mountains, on the other mountains too, Ninurta waterfalls dammed up waterfalls so they could have drinking water. Terraces constructed. The eldest son of Zizidra was taught how to raise crops. To Ishkor, his youngest, Enlil assigned another task. Where the waters have receded, go and find remaining fruit-bearing trees. To him, as fruit cultivator, Zisidra's youngest son was assigned. The first fruit they found was brought to Ninmah. Of its juice, as the Anunnaki's renowned elixir was made up, Zisidra took a sip. By one sip, then and another, Zisidra was overpowered. Like a drunkard, he fell asleep. Then a gift to the Anunnaki and Earthlings, Enki presented. The chest that Ninagel had carried, he unveiled. Its surprising contents to all, he announced. The life essences and life eggs in the wombs of the four-legged animals from Zisidra's boats can be combined. Sheep for wool and meat will multiply. Cattle for milk and hides we will all have. Then with other living creatures, the earth we shall replenish. To Dumuzi, the shepherding tasks Enki gave, and Zisidra, his middle son, was to assist him. Then to the dark-hued landmass, where his sons and sons' domain had been, Enki turned his attention. With Ninagel at the confluence of mighty waters, he dammed the mountains. Fierce waterfalls to a lake he channeled and made the waters accumulate into a lake. Is this where he's creating the Tigris and the Euphrates River? Very well could be. Then the lands between the Abzu and the Great Sea with Marduk he surveyed. Where habitations once were, he now considered how to drain the river's valleys. At midstream, where the river's waters cascaded, he raised an island from the waters. In its bowels, twin caverns he carved out. Above them from the stones, he fashioned sluices. From there, the two channels in the rocks he cut for the waters, two narrows he fashioned. Thus, the flowing waters from the highlands, coming, he would slow or let go faster with dams and sluices. The two narrows, the waters he regulated. From the cavern island, the island of Abu, the river's serpentine valley from under the water he raised. In the land of the two narrows, for Dumuzi and the shepherds, a habitation did Enki fashion, a land of two narrows, a land of two rivers between Tigris and Euphrates. The land between two rivers. There you go. With satisfaction to all of this, Enlil sent his words to Nibiru. With words of concern, Nibiru responded. The close passage that Earth and Mars affected on Nibiru caused too much damage. The shield of gold dust was torn and the atmosphere was dwindling again. Now new supplies of gold were quickly needed. I mean, see, these guys sound like our fucking elite, don't they? They sound like the same type of motherfuckers our elite. I mean, you know, let's wipe out Earth. Let's wipe out all the Earthlings. Fuck the gold. Fuck everything else. Wipe them out. Kill them all. One guy has compassion, decides to save them. Then once they find out, okay, yeah, we wiped out just about everything, but there is a little bit surviving. Well, now our atmosphere got fucked up again, so, you know, we're going to need you to send some more gold up here. I mean, these fucking, no wonder we were ruled over by greedy bastards. The quote-unquote gods were the same goddamn way. Fervently, Enki went to the Abzu. He went with Gabil, his son, to survey and search. All of the gold mines were gone. They were buried by the water of the avalanche. In the Eden, Bad Tibiara no longer existed. In Sappara, a place for the chariots, was no more. The hundreds of Anunnaki who in the mines in Bad Tibiara toiled were gone from the earth. The multitude of earthlings, as primitive workers serving by the deluge, were turned to clay. No gold kept from earth can any more be provided. Enlil and Enki announced to Nibiru. On earth and on Nibiru, there was desperation. At that time, Ninurta completed his tasks in the mountains of the cedars. To the mountain land beyond the oceans, they once again journeyed. From that land, on the other side of earth, he delivered astounding words. The avalanche of waters cut deep into the mountainsides. From the mountainsides, there was uncounted gold in nuggets, large and small. To the rivers below, the gold fell down. Without mining, the gold can be hauled. Enlil and Enki to the distant mountain land hurried. With amazement, they viewed their discovery. Gold, pure gold, refining and smelting, not required. It was lying all about. A miracle it is, so Enki to Enlil was saying. What by Nibiru was wrought, by Nibiru was amended. The unseen hand of the creator of all has enabled Nibiru to live. Now, who could collect the nuggets? And how would they be sent to Nibiru? The leaders asked. Of the first question, Ninurta had the answer. In the high mountain land on this side of earth, some earthlings have survived. Descendants of Cain they are, descendants of the serpent. Didn't think we'd catch that, huh? They are, with handling of metals, they are knowing. 4 brothers and 4 sisters are their leaders. On rafts, they saved themselves. Now their mountaintop is in the midst of a great lake that is an island. As the protector of their forefathers, they recall me. The great protector, they call me. By the report that other earthlings had survived, the leaders were heartened. Even Enlil, who the end of all flesh planned, was no longer angered. It is the will of the creator of all. To each other, they said. Now, let us establish a new place for the celestial chariots to land, so that, therefore, the gold can be sent to Nibiru. For a new plain whose soil has dried and hardened, they searched. In the proximity of the landing place, in a desolate peninsula, such a plain they found. Flat as a quiet lake it was, by white mountains it was surrounded. And that's the end of that. That's right at the beginning of page 234, 234, 234, 234. Now this is the account of the new place of the celestial chariot. So the great deluge just happened. They've all come to the conclusion that this was, they played God and created mankind, and mankind believed these extraterrestrials to be gods, but you see, there's still that creator of all that is even elusive to these people, and once they've seen the hand of that at work, then it changes everything, you see. Very interesting stuff, that whole tie-in with the, be prosper and multiply stuff, just a very interesting thing there. And we'll get into more of this tomorrow night, page 234. Man, quite a show tonight, lots of good info. I hope that you'll spread this show around and tell your friends about it and continue to tell everybody about the network and what we're trying to do here. Always like to have good listeners. My email address, you got questions, comments, anything else, globalrealityshow@gmail.com. It's globalrealityshow@gmail.com. TheGlobalReality.com is my website. Please support our work, folks. Shipping banner is there for the month for the bills. Donate button for all other amounts. If you want to donate, larger amounts that can go towards helping us buy new equipment and buy new cameras so we can get the Secret Volume 2 out this month. That would be super duper. That's our big goal right now. So any amount helps, small or large. And we also have the P.O. box there for people that can't use PayPal, and that's address is on my website as well. My name is Josh Reeves. I love each and every one of you, and we will see you tomorrow for the broadcast. I hope you guys have a great day, great afternoon, great night, great morning, whatever. Take care. We'll see you next time. I love you.